This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, horror, mystery film called A Classic Horror Story. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. In Italy, a pregnant young woman named Eliza vomits in the toilet of a diner at a gas station. Later, her mother calls her on the phone to ask if she's alright. Eliza notes that it's only the second time that she's thrown up that day. Her mother advises her to get something to eat because she needs to be in good condition for her procedure to terminate her pregnancy the next day. She reminds her that she cannot afford to have the baby because she's still in her training period at work. After the call, a carpooling app on her phone notifies her that her friends have arrived. Not long after, Eliza sees an RV stopping at the gas station. Inside the camper van, Fabrizio records a video to tell his social media followers that he's headed to his hometown, Calabria, with his new travel companions, Sofia and Mark. Introduce themselves in the video and note that they will attend a wedding. Riccardo, a doctor, is not enthusiastic about being recorded, but he discloses that he's off to see his family. Soon, Eliza joins the group and tells Fabrizio that she's going to see her parents. Not long after, the group drives off to Calabria. After driving for a while, Fabrizio offers them a beer from the fridge, so Mark takes a bottle for each passenger. Eliza refuses to drink, but Mark encourages her to take a sip and be part of the group. Later, Mark reads a newspaper article about the disappearance of a mother and daughter. It's believed that they were abducted by the mafia group called the 'Ndrangheta. Another article features a female mayor who is fighting against the mafia. Mark jokes that she looks like a lasagna, but Fabrizio notes that she's a tough government official who took people off the streets. Eliza suddenly feels nauseous, so Fabrizio stops the van on the side of the road. As Eliza throws up, Riccardo tries calling his wife, but she's not answering, so he leaves a voice message saying he came up with a solution for their daughter. Mark suddenly gets in the driver's seat and insists on taking over the wheel to reach their destination faster. Sofia reminds him that he's drunk, but he contends that he drives better when he's drinking. Fabrizio doesn't want him to drive, but he relents when Mark starts the engine. Later that night, all the passengers had fallen asleep except for Fabrizio. Mark is also starting to feel sleepy, so he turns up the music and starts a conversation with Fabrizio to keep himself awake. Mark asks if he's really from Calabria, so Fabrizio reiterates that it's his hometown, but he's currently living in Rome to study film. When Mark asks why he's wearing a hearing aid, Fabrizio discloses that someone once smashed his head into a wall. Fabrizio suddenly sees a dead goat on the road, so he grabs the wheel to avoid it, but the van crashes into a tree nearby. In the morning, Eliza wakes up to the panicked voices of her companions as they treat to Mark's wounded leg. As Riccardo puts a splint on the leg, he instructs Eliza to call emergency services. However, they soon find out that there's no signal in the vicinity. Riccardo suggests stopping other vehicles on the road to ask for help, but Eliza looks outside and finds out that they're not on the side of the road. The group finds themselves in an open field in the middle of the forest. Riccardo asks if anybody saw how they got there, but Fabrizio says that he passed out. They see a cabin not far from the van, so they knock on the door. When no one answers, Sofia suggests breaking in, but Riccardo advises her to just wait in the van. Back inside the vehicle, Sofia asks Mark how far they were from the road when the van crashed into the tree. Mark contends that the tree was only a few meters away, but Sofia notes that there's no road in sight. Riccardo leaves the van to look for a road, so Fabrizio follows him and tells him that they have to head south. Eliza sends several texts to her mother to ask for help, but none of her messages get through. Sofia approaches her and shows her a funny video she recorded with Mark. When Eliza asks if they've been dating for a long time, Sofia reveals that they met when she moved to America. Sofia asks what Eliza does for a living, so she discloses that she's an intern at a consulting firm. Sofia then shares that she just started a 3D printing company that creates jewelry. When Sofia asks if Eliza blames Mark for their situation, Eliza stresses that she doesn't. She assures Sofia that Mark will be alright. Later, Eliza notices that the door on the house is open. She tries to alert Sofia, but she sees that she's fallen asleep. Deep in the woods, Riccardo and Fabrizio come across effigies of 3 men, along with decapitated heads of 5 pigs on stakes. A sign below the pigs' heads indicates that the effigies represent the 3 Knights of Honor. Fabrizio stresses that they have to leave, because the blood on the pigs' heads is still fresh. Inside the house, Eliza finds numerous pictures of farmers wearing goat head masks. While staring at the photos, a door in another room slams shut. When Eliza goes to the room to investigate, she sees an altar for the 3 knights. Fabrizio later explains that the artwork on the altar depicts the legend of Osso, Mastrosso, and Carcanasso, a story he learned from his grandmother. One knight has no eyes, but he can see in the dark. The other has no ears, but he can still hear his prey. The last knight has no mouth, but people are advised to keep their mouth shut when they see him. The three knights are brothers who came from another world long ago. When the people were dying of starvation, they promised to help, but the knights asked for a sacrifice. The villagers then prepared a woman for a ritual. First, they cut off her tongue. Then they took her ears and eyes. Fabrizio recounts that the knights got rid of hunger, but they turned the villagers into their flock. As the group tries to get some sleep that night, Fabrizio remarks that their situation appears to be a setup for a classic horror movie, since they're isolated in a place with several animal heads and their phones don't work. When Fabrizio takes a leak outside, he notices two men watching him. Back in the van, the group hears a scream coming from the house. Eliza and Sophia go inside to investigate, while Ricardo stays behind to watch over Mark. Soon, Fabrizio returns and tells Ricardo to leave the van because he saw someone in the woods. The four leave Mark alone in the van and go into the attic. There, they see a young girl trapped inside a pod made of twigs. Eliza realizes that the girl's tongue was cut off when she sees it in a jar next to the pod. As Sophia attempts to release the girl, they hear a siren blaring outside. They see men dragging Mark out of the van, so Sophia goes to try and save him. However, Ricardo holds her down and covers her mouth as Fabrizio shuts the attic door. The men take Mark into the house and chain him to a table. Then, a man hits both of his feet with a wooden hammer. Afterward, they fit a device with spikes on Mark's head. The group watches in horror through a hole on the floor as a man turns a lever on the device to pierce Mark's eyes with the spikes. At daybreak, they free the girl from the pod and leave the house. The group makes their way through the woods to find the open road, and soon they come across a field with dozens of abandoned cars. Sophia realizes that they were not the first people who got lost in the forest. As Ricardo tries to find something useful in the cars, he gets frustrated at them for not helping him. Sophia castigates him for preventing her from helping Mark, but Ricardo notes that she didn't fight him hard enough to break free and save her boyfriend. Later, Eliza finds the girl inside a car holding a journal. The girl reveals that the journal belongs to her, and her name is Chiara. When Eliza asks if Chiara knows the way out of the forest, Chiara writes in the notebook that they are not in a forest. The group hears the siren again, so they keep trying to find a way out of the woods. They soon find themselves back in the field with the cabin, but their van has disappeared. Fabrizio is puzzled because they had been walking south the whole time, but they still ended up going in a circle. Fabrizio notices that the farmers left a bottle of beer, so he takes it and advises the group to go inside the house for rest that night. The group passes around the last beer bottle, but Fabrizio refuses to drink because he must keep watch. Ricardo suddenly confesses that he was put on disciplinary probation at his job because of a mistake that caused a patient's death. His wife took off with his daughter because he said something terrible to her when he came home. Ricardo then reveals that he joined the trip to go home to his mother. Fabrizio recounts that someone once accused him of being a mafia member because he is a southerner. He denied it, but the man kept accusing him, so Fabrizio had him killed. The group burst into laughter upon realizing that it was a joke. While the rest of the group slept, Eliza told Sophia that she once told her mother that she wanted to quit her studies. Her mom drove her to a seaside resort and showed her a mansion with a pool. She then told Eliza that the mansion would have been theirs if they weren't paying for her studies, so she continued attending her classes. Sophia encourages her to keep fighting for the sake of her baby. Eliza, however, confesses that she was supposed to terminate her pregnancy. Sophia then gives Eliza her 3D printed ring and discloses that it was the first one that she created. Hours later, Eliza wakes up when she hears the sirens blaring. When she goes outside, she sees the followers of the knights waiting in front of the house while Sophia and Ricardo are tied up on a stage behind them. Chiara is back in the pod in the middle of the stage. As Eliza stares at the stage, Fabrizio suddenly grabs her and takes her back into the house. The followers turn to the stage as they start performing a ritual. Fabrizio and Eliza watch from the window as a man gouges out Sophia's eyes. Another man slices off Ricardo's ears, and the third man places the eyes and ears on Chiara's pod, which is then raised to an effigy to become its head. Afterward, the two men kill Sophia and Ricardo by cutting their throats. Fabrizio hugs Eliza as she sobs in fear. When Eliza notices the beer bottle, she figures that it must have been drugged, and remembers that Fabrizio was the only one who didn't drink. Fabrizio claims that he's also scared, and approaches to embrace her. When he does, she hears a voice from his earpiece. A woman instructs Fabrizio to take her under the deer's head mounted on the wall. When Eliza grabs the earpiece, Fabrizio starts rambling incoherently and yells at Eliza for ruining his plans. He then turns to the deer head and instructs someone to grab Eliza. A man immediately enters the cabin and drags Eliza through the door. The next morning, Eliza finds herself in a wheelchair behind a large table with her hands nailed to the armrest. A boy suddenly starts singing as villagers prepare their meal. On the other end of the table, Eliza sees the mayor. Known for standing up to the mafia, She begs the mayor for help, but she ignores her and turns her attention to the singing boy. After the song, the mayor raises her glass to toast the 3 knights and tells the villagers to start eating. When Eliza starts crying, the villagers interrupt the meal to imitate her. The mayor stops them and explains to Eliza that the villagers consider Eliza the most important person because her death will allow the mayor to take good care of them. When the mayor leaves, a villager takes Eliza to a shack where she discovers a control room with screens displaying footage from the hidden cameras in the van and the cabin. Fabrizio soon appears on the screen, revealing that he's been filming the events from the start. Eliza asks him what happened to Chiara, but Fabrizio stresses that he won't spoil her. Eliza suddenly bursts out laughing upon realizing that Fabrizio is filming a bad horror movie with villains named Osso, Mastrosso, and Carganasso. Fabrizio explains that they were the founding fathers of the Mafia, and he turned them into horror movie characters like Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface. Eliza points out that his movie is just a bad imitation of other films. Fabrizio then laments that Italians refuse to see horror movies, but they seem to enjoy hearing about gruesome incidents on the news. He argues that he's making a horror film because it's what the audience wants. After Fabrizio cuts off the feed, Eliza breaks free from the nails on the wheelchair and leaves the shack. Outside, she finds a camper van where Fabrizio stored the dead goat they avoided on the road. As she searches for Chiara, she comes across a tent where she finds the mask of the 3 knights. Inside another camper van, Fabrizio plans to shoot another scene with Eliza because it was ruined when she discovered his earpiece. Fabrizio wants to insert the new scene after the sacrifice of Riccardo and Sofia. A girl playing a handheld video game tells him that his plan won't work because Eliza could die if he hits her again. Eliza overhears the conversation and finds out that Fabrizio is talking to Chiara. Fabrizio suggests knocking Eliza out by mixing sleeping pills with beer, but Chiara points out that their mother wants Eliza to be aware in the scene. An argument ensues when Chiara tells Fabrizio that he's an incompetent filmmaker. Their bickering ends when Chiara gets frustrated and slaps Fabrizio in the face. Moments later, Chiara wears a prop in her mouth to pretend that her tongue is cut before leaving the van. When she opens the door, she sees Eliza wearing a goat head mask and points a shotgun at her. As soon as Chiara recognizes her from the bloody hand, Eliza shoots her dead. When Fabrizio comes out of the van, Eliza tries to shoot him, but the shotgun jams. As Fabrizio approaches, she quickly fixes the weapon and shoots him in the knee. Eliza then points a camera at Fabrizio as he crawls on the ground. When Fabrizio starts begging for his life, Eliza tells him not to worry because it's only a movie. She then puts the barrel into Fabrizio's mouth and pulls the trigger. Afterward, Eliza takes off the mask in front of the camera and remarks that they now have a proper ending for the movie. As Eliza tries to find her way out of the woods, she comes across a boy, so she drops her gun and follows him through a broken wire fence. A sign on the fence indicates that they just came out of a restricted military area. As she continues following the boy, Eliza reaches the seaside, where she sees many beachgoers. People stare at Eliza's blood-covered face as she walks towards the sea. Realizing that there's a cell signal at the beach, Eliza pulls out her phone and finds several messages from her mom. Eliza drops her phone and continues walking towards the sea while the beachgoers gawk at her and record her on their phones. The blood from her wounded hand mixes with salt water when she goes for a swim. In the chat room of a website for blood flicks, the moderator asks the visitors for comments about the film. A visitor remarks that it was ripped off from other films. Another commenter contends that the legend of the 3 knights is real. A man behind the computer soon turns off the chat room to watch the movie. He watches the beginning for a few seconds, then skips to the part where Eliza shoots Fabrizio. Afterward, he turns off the movie and hits the dislike button.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.